Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of Haunted Places and Coffee. I do apologize for not uploading last Friday. I had a very busy week and I just did not have the time to get around to doing everything I needed to do to make a video happen. So hopefully this will make up for it. So starting off with today's coffee, by the way, I am totally kicking myself because I had this coffee mug apparently and was blitheringly unaware of it because I have so many coffee mugs and several of them are just like pushed to the back of my little storage cubby, and this mug would have been perfect for my first video. The Ohio Amish Country mug that details freaking Walnut Creek, Berlin, Mount Hope, Millersburg, and Charm right there on the sign with the little buggy and the barn. That would have been perfect for my Panthers Hollow video, and I completely forgot that I even had this mug. So I'm making up for it by using it today, even though it's not really related to today's location. We're gonna be talking about Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is on the border of Ohio, and the Ohio River does run right past it. So 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it kind of works. So of course, before we get into today's haunted location, we have to get into today's coffee. And I picked up a brand new coffee product that apparently just came out. I don't know, I never saw it before. It intrigued me. We have Monster Cold Brew. So it's like an energy drink plus coffee, and this is the latte version. Nitro infused coffee, medium roast. Profile is sweet and full body. Strength is 4 out of 5. And this has 200 milligrams of caffeine. All right, we're gonna give it a try. Oh, I scared the cat. Ooh, it actually smells like coffee. I kind of expected more of an energy drink smell. But no, that legitimately smells like coffee. Ooh, and it looks like coffee. Ooh, that's pleasantly surprising. Oh my God, 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 it's foaming. Please don't overflow. Whoa, okay, that was borderline terrifying. The laws of science are not letting it overflow, even though it's got this big bubble. It's got a foamy head. If I can even get past this foam to try it. Try to disperse the foam a little bit. I did not mean to overpour. I didn't know it was gonna foam up like that. My goodness. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit for 1 second. I'm gonna try it from the can first. That's not great. I'm not gonna lie, that's not great. There's no sweetness to it. It's kind of just like a milk beverage with a slight coffee flavor. And I realize that a latte is milk with some coffee, like espresso in it. I realize that, but they could have flavored it or sweetened it or something instead of just making it like everything else. But yeah, it kind of just tastes like your average latte. Like, I mean, nitro infused. I mean, I don't even get energy drink from this. It's just kind of, it's just milky and with a little aftertaste of coffee. Okay, anyway, it's fun to try new things, right? So my hair is up today in this little clippy doodle guy because I just did not feel like going to the trouble of curling it because it's a real pain in the butt. I have extremely straight hair and extremely long hair, and I extremely don't like taking the time to curl it. And I was really excited to get today's video done because this location fascinates me. It's fascinated me for years, and most of you probably have already heard of it and know what's going on, but in case you didn't, and in case you don't know everything, we're gonna get into it. So in today's episode of Haunted Places and Coffee, we're talking about Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And that is, of course, in the United States, and it borders on the state of Ohio and the Ohio River, as well as the Kanawha River. And they meet at a point at the southern part of town, the Ohio River and the Kanawha River. So originally it was Camp Point Pleasant, established in 1774 in that location where the two rivers come together in West Virginia by General Andrew Lewis. If you know anything about the United States history, the United States did not become the United States until 1776, 2 years later. Not relevant to this at all. So anyway, it was right at the cusp of, you know, our like woohoo independence stuff. So the town Camp Point Pleasant wasn't officially chartered until 1794 when they decided to actually like name it Point Pleasant, and it was officially named Point Pleasant in 1804 then, and it became the town that it is today. Most of you probably already know what Point Pleasant, West Virginia is famous for. in the haunted community, and if you don't, I'm about to tell you. Most of you have probably heard of the legend of the Mothman, which is a very tall, very large, man-like moth creature, or moth-like man creature, depending on how you want to look at it. It's usually described as several feet taller than an average human being, 8, 9, 10, sometimes even 12 feet, with large wings, an enormous wingspan, like a 10-foot wingspan, black body or a dark body, and most notably, the glowing red eyes. Now, sightings of the Mothman have happened all over the world at various points in time, and the sightings seem to coincide with right before some kind of major disaster happening. So people tend to associate sightings of the Mothman with omens of bad things to come. The Mothman is sort of known as like a harbinger of death and doom. While not necessarily credited with causing disasters, it is seen as sort of an omen if Mothman sightings happen, especially in mass quantities. Like if you just kind of see the Mothman out of the corner of your eye like one time and then go along with your day and nobody else sees it, you know, maybe that's just a fluke, it's a weird thing that happened. But the en masse sightings in like one location in a short period of time is usually seen as an omen of some sort of disaster coming. And Point Pleasant, West Virginia is definitely no exception to that. The first Mothman sighting happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia on November 12th, 1966, and there were dozens, I think upwards of like 100 sightings between that time and the ultimate collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967. So only about the span of a year, Mothman was seen in Point Pleasant upwards of like 100 different times by like 100 different people. And the first sort of unofficial sighting of the Mothman that coincides with the Point Pleasant disaster of the Silver Bridge collapse was actually not quite in Point Pleasant. It was actually in, I can't read my own handwriting, Sheridan, is that what that says? I don't know, Sheridan, West Virginia, apologies, by several grave diggers who were working, you know, on the job, digging their graves, doing like they do, and they looked up and they saw this big winged man type of deal sort of fly over the trees and go across their sightline across the trees. And they all saw it and they described it as a brown human being, which is strange, but then later on it was credited as a Mothman sighting, and then 3 days later is when Mothman started appearing in Point Pleasant. And the people who experienced the first Mothman sighting in Point Pleasant was two couples. They were all sitting in the same car together, and they all of a sudden saw what they described as a white winged creature, 6 or 7 feet tall, with bright red eyes that they said were about 6 inches apart, and they said that it had a wingspan of about 10 feet. I mean, 6 or 7 feet tall, something with a wingspan of 10, I mean, that's enormous. That is absolutely enormous. And now I don't know why the Mothman they reported was white, because normally it's a dark color. Moths can be white. In fact, I think most moths are white, the ones that I'm familiar with. We call them millers in the country, the little tiny ones. Digressing. Anyway, apparently this Mothman creature that they saw was just kind of standing in front of their car that they were sitting in. And so, you know, they wanted to hightail it out of there, as you would. So allegedly this thing actually chased them. They said that this thing could fly what they estimated to be about 100 miles per hour. That's how fast this thing could fly, according to the eyewitness report, right? So they must have been booking. But they did say that it seemed to be kind of clumsy on its feet, which is why it would choose to fly, I suppose, because running wasn't exactly a strong suit. So this thing chased their car to the outskirts of town, where it eventually just kind of scuttled off into a nearby field and disappeared.
It all begins on November 15th, 1966, when a teenager named Linda Scarberry reports seeing an unlikely apparition at an abandoned factory on the edge of town. She and 3 others tell a far-fetched story about coming face to face with a creature that has the body of a man, but is over 7 feet tall, with bat-like wings and piercing, hypnotic red eyes. Is this your only encounter with Mothman?
Oh no, we saw it dozens of times.
Always in this immediate area?
No, we've seen it downtown. And it was at our apartment one day, and it was sitting out there on the roof.
Didn't it just give you nightmares to see this thing?
Oh yeah. At first I was really afraid of it. But it had so many chances, to hurt us, and it didn't. It didn't seem like it wanted to. Its eyes would kind of hypnotize you, like it acted like it was trying to communicate with it through its eyes.
By early 1967, more than 100 other witnesses claim they've seen the apparition too.
So that was the first Mothman sighting in Point Pleasant, and the two fellas spoke to the local newspaper about it, and the one said, if I'd seen this thing by myself, I wouldn't have said anything. But there were 4 of us who saw it, so we're saying something because that was crazy. And when they were asked to sort of elaborate on the description, they just kind of were like, well, it was a man with wings. And I mean, even regardless of the fact of what the Mothman looked like by description or the feelings that it evoked, like I think that any large creature that chases your car to the outskirts of town would be terrifying no matter what it looked like. But the fact that it looked like a winged man so large, I would be terrified too. And you know what? If it would happen to just me, I wouldn't say anything either because I would look crazy. But yeah, if I had 3 witnesses, I'd be talking about it too. Oh God. So in the 3 days following that first initial sighting by the 2 couples, there were 8 more reports. 8 more reports in 3 days after that in Point Pleasant of Mothman sightings by various citizens of the town. And a couple of them were volunteer firefighters, men of honor, right? And their description of it was more like a very large bird with red eyes. So everybody seemed to have a slightly dissimilar description, but I mean, if it's something that you're not familiar with in this physical world, I guess you would get a varying description of the things because I mean, like the best you can do is it looks like a big man with wings or it's bird-like or whatever, but the constant thing seems to be the big red eyes. And there was another fella who was sitting at home watching television and he started noticing some strange patterns going on his television screen, like a malfunction or something. And then he heard immediately afterwards a mysterious sound outside his house. He didn't know if they were correlated, but he went and looked, shone the flashlight around, and the flashlight landed on these 2 bright red eyes staring back at him. He said it resembled like bicycle reflectors if you shone a light across those and they just pew. And then unfortunately, shortly after this incident with the man who had the television disturbance and saw the red eyes with the sound, his dog disappeared somehow. He doesn't know whether or not to attribute it to his weird experience, but of course a lot of people are sort of putting the pieces together and speculating, well, the Mothman took your dog. Honestly, I would probably think the same thing. So while people in Point Pleasant had their own experiences near or around their homes, a lot of the sightings actually took place near the TNT area, which was a series of bunkers that had been used during World War II for munitions manufacturing. And obviously they were long since defunct and everything, but the locals called it the TNT area. Allegedly, that's where the Mothman liked to hang out, and that's where he would come out and show himself to people. A lot of people thought it was a hoax, they thought all kinds of things. They thought someone's playing a prank, or maybe this is a UFO connected thing, like this is an alien something or other. Like a scientist or two were like, oh, it's this it's this crane, it's this bird that's native to the area, and it's as tall as a man and it's got like a red thing around its eyes, that's probably what you're seeing. So there were all kinds of things all over the place about what people were actually seeing, but everyone was sticking to their guns. They were like, no, this doesn't feel like a hoax. Something weird is going on. We're still seeing this thing and it doesn't make any sense. And I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I know what I experienced. So everybody was pretty adamant that they were seeing the same thing, and strange goings-ons. Strange occurrences. So the thing that sort of cemented all of these sightings together as not being a hoax or seeing birds and mistaking that for something else is that, well, the Mothman is attributed to disasters on the horizon, and there was a bridge. There was a bridge in Point Pleasant that was Route 95, I believe, US Route 95, that ran between Point Pleasant and, I should know how to say the name of this town. I'm from Ohio. I'm ashamed of myself that I've never heard it pronounced out loud. Gallipolis? Gallipolis, some town in Ohio. Okay, so the bridge connected Point Pleasant with this town in Ohio, right over the Ohio River. It was called the Silver Bridge, and it was built in 1928, and it was the first I-bar suspension bridge of its kind in the United States. Cars back then were much lighter than they are now. Like your average Model T car weighed about 1,500 pounds, whereas your average vehicle car, standard car today, weighs about 4,000 pounds. Back then, they didn't take into consideration the weights of vehicles or the mass quantities of vehicles. You know, in 1928, how could you think that far ahead? So December 15th, 1967, there's a rush hour traffic jam of all these cars sitting on the Silver Bridge. Now, allegedly, people reported seeing the Mothman on or above the bridge just before its collapse. Supposedly, the determined reason for the collapse of the bridge was one of the I-bars came loose. Once again, in the construction of the bridge back in 1928, they can't anticipate everything, so they didn't really have anything in place for if something should give way or go wrong on this bridge, there's gonna be like a fail-safe to keep the whole thing from falling down if one thing goes wrong. And there was one woman who was interviewed about it. She was a resident of Point Pleasant at the time, and I guess her son witnessed the bridge collapsing and she heard it. And they interviewed her, and she said that her son said it was almost like you build up a child's toy, you know, with pieces, and you just smack it and it falls down.
Mrs. Foster, what was the first thing that you saw?
Well, I heard before I saw anything. I was standing right here in my kitchen preparing dinner, and my two boys came out the back door down the steps to get their bicycles. They got down to the bottom of the steps here, and they started screaming. We heard this terrible boom, and my boys looked around and saw the bridge starting to fall. Well, as soon as I heard the sound, I, of course, ran out the back door to see what was wrong with the boys and what the noise was. And as I got out my back door, of course, I could see what was happening, and I stood right here and watched the whole bridge.
What did the bridge look like?
Well, it's like my little boy said. It was just like you would build a bridge out of child's building toys. And then if you just take a stick and just knock the props out from under it, that's the way it went.
Did you see all the trucks and cars falling?
I could see part of them, yes, from where I'm standing. But, of course, where the trees and things are, I couldn't see too much.
So that's basically what happened. This one I-bar gave way and the whole bridge just fell down. And unfortunately, 31 vehicles went into the Ohio River. Obviously, the river was icy cold. It was December. And 46 people were killed either by drowning or being crushed by the falling vehicles and pieces of the bridge. And 9 people were injured but survived. And they did interview one of the survivors and asked him about his experience.
Mr. Ellis, when was the first indication you had that everything was all wrong?
Well, I came to myself after, I imagine it was after the truck came to rest on the shore there on the ground. Someone was trying to get me out. That's all I can remember. See, I was in the sleeper.
Were you asleep at the time the bridge fell?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what was the first thing you realized after the collapse?
I realized someone was either pulling me out of the truck cab or lifting me onto a stretcher or something like that. I was so rattled, trying to figure out what I couldn't. I believe they was lifting me onto a stretcher.
What happened to the man who was driving the truck?
He's just across the room here. He has a broken back, and I'm not sure, but maybe one or two, or both of his legs broke.
The man who was in the truck with you, have you spoken to him since?
Oh, yes, He keep him under sedation because he has quite a bit of pain. But he comes to, and we talk a little bit occasionally.
Ever have an accident like this or anything like this before?
Not this serious, no. This is the worst I've seen.
So after the Silver Bridge collapse, apparently the Mothman sightings completely stopped, which sort of validated the year span of mass sightings in that area leading up to the collapse of the Silver Bridge, and then the sightings stopped. So while people don't, blame the Mothman for causing the disaster, they do attribute the sightings as an omen of the disaster, because he had no reason to show up after that at that point, and apparently he did not. Although there have still been occasional here and there reported Mothman sightings in and around Point Pleasant since that time, but never again has it been such a concentrated event of sightings in such a short period of time in one small little location like that. And John Keel went on to actually investigate this because he was very fascinated in the case, and he actually wrote a book in 1975 called The Mothman Prophecies. And you can see where I'm going with this. In 2002, of course, they made a movie called The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere and Laura Linney, which is one of my favorite movies. I've got to say, we watched it recently, which is what inspired me to do Point Pleasant for this video. I've watched it so many times. I absolutely love the movie. It's so creepy. It gives me chills every single time, and it's mostly accurate, taking away the Richard Gere character and his involvement in it. Stories involving the residents of Point Pleasant and the sightings, and of course the Silver Bridge collapse, all accurate. Of course, it all took place in the 1960s, which isn't the time period in the movie, but the accounts are based on 100% true events and sightings and reports. Now, having said that, Point Pleasant wasn't always a very thriving town. You know, it was just kind of a quiet little nothing of a town there, you know, on the tip of West Virginia, right by the Ohio River, you know. But since the movie was made and the movie came out and this publicity about the Mothman thing just kind of started happening, it's really helped out the town, and it you know, started thriving a little bit more. People wanted to come and see what the fuss was all about, especially after the movie came out. So in 2002, they started doing a Mothman Festival, and they hold it every September. I think that's super cool. I did not know that before I did the research for this video. So apparently you go there, they have like events, you know, and they have souvenirs and tons of stuff that you can buy that's related to the Mothman, like food products and t-shirts and mugs and all kinds of things Mothman related, you know. And they say that they get upwards of like 10,000 visitors at one of these things, and like the main street is so incredibly crowded you can't even like move. You can't walk around because there's so many people there for this Mothman Festival. And they have a museum there as well, and they also have a 12-foot tall Mothman statue in their main square there, you know, to sort of commemorate, this is what happened here, this is what our town is famous for, this is what's keeping it thriving, because people come to see what's up and to be a part of it, and they think it's great. They think it's great. Obviously, the Silver Bridge collapse was a major tragedy, which, you know, but it's part of their history, and it ended up benefiting the economy of the town and the reputation of the town and everything like that. God, that is so awful. Oh, and if you want to learn more about the Mothman, like sightings and the legend of the thing and everything, there's tons of documentaries you can watch that have to do with the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant and just sort of the Mothman legend, like in general. There's lots of articles you can read. There's tons of YouTube videos. Of course, you can watch the movie if you just want to watch a movie and be entertained. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, it will definitely give you the chills. Gives me the chills every single time. I've watched it like 30 times and I still get creeped out when I watch it. But also that probably has a lot to do with the fact that I grew up in Ohio, and Point Pleasant is literally, it's right there. It's right there. And can you believe it? I have never been there. I don't know what's wrong with me. I have been close many times on drives and stuff, and I could have exited and headed towards Point Pleasant, just check it out, and I never did. So I'm making it a point to go to Point Pleasant. And now that I know about this Mothman Festival that they have, I'm going. So there's a lot of things that I'm gonna be doing, apparently. I have to go to that Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa, and now I definitely have to go to Point Pleasant in West Virginia if I can get back to Ohio at some point in the future and have the time and the resources. It has to be in September so we can go to the Mothman Festival. Adding that to the list, if I end up going there, I will definitely be going with my boyfriend. Obviously, if I go, I'll check it out. We'll see what's up. I'll probably vlog about it on my vlog channel, and no promises as to when that's gonna happen because we're stuck here in North Dakota for a while, you know. It's just the way it is, life. So that is the haunted history of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, with a little bit of Mothman information as well. Feel free to look into this even more if you want. It's a very fascinating legend. The sightings are unreal. I don't know what I would do if I saw the Mothman. I would freeze, probably not be able to speak. There's like a fight or flight thing. There's a third one that applies to me, and that's freeze. When I'm scared, I freeze. There's no fighting, there's no flighting, I just freeze. I would be useless in a crisis of that magnitude because I just can't even move or speak or think. So I hope I never see the Mothman, but if I do, you'll be the first to know. Why do I keep drinking that? It's terrible. Anyway. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Haunted Places and Coffee. I will try very hard to be a little bit more punctual with my scheduling from now on so that I won't miss Fridays and you guys can continue to be entertained every week by these spooky locations. And having said that, I will see you guys next time. Stay spooky, my friends.